It's part 2. Been waiting for a whole week so we can finish out this actual sector, and I know last time I said, there's no telling how long this is going to go, whether it's going to be a full episode. I meant to imply, like, we might be over with this really short, and this could be a shorter length episode. Clearly not the case, as we wound up needing to go into a second part. But truly this time, particularly since one of the 2 remaining settlements we have to do is on the same planet as the last one, it's back on Taiga. We're not going to have to generate a new planet. This one truly might be a little bit of a short one, and I hope that doesn't bother you. I hope these GM sessions in general work for you guys. They are, for me, they're kind of a nice breath of fresh air. Not to say that I don't enjoy doing the regular episodes in character, playing as Emil and all that. Those are great. I love the way the story's been going. I'm a big fan of what's been coming through this game. However, these are definitely a nice low-key, almost a break for me. I feel a lot more able to just kind of turn on the mic and go. Whereas, as a little bit of a peek behind the curtain, when I'm doing a normal episode, I do that sometimes. Sometimes it is just one straight shot and, I edit out some of the longer gaps. But a lot of the time I might have to pause, think for a moment, and get back to it. There's a long way of saying these don't take me quite as long to record. Still plenty of time to edit. But anyway, let's finish out this sector. A sector whose name we still don't have. We'll be doing that at the end, I think, during the sector trouble and all of that. I think that's what's coming. But the next thing we need to do is make another settlement. Now, the one thing that I don't want to forget about, we've got 2 settlements left. So either this one or the next one is going to have to be the place where Emil needs to go to get his, the power core. The shipyard's got to be on one of these. And when I was briefly thinking about this in between the recordings, I did think it might be neat to have the other one be here so that, like, it's more than just a shipyard, but it'll be a place that's got kind of an active war going on. Like, there's the skirmishes happening. Like, there's more happening than just we're a salvage yard. And it would make a lot of sense because we talked about how, like, there's a big crash ship on Taiga where people control routes to get there, and it's just so massive that even though it's been stripped for a lot of things, there's just so much left to do. That would make a lot of sense if they also just kind of buy and sell and trade in ship parts. Like, it would fit in pretty well over here. When I started this thought, I was going to kind of randomly determine if it's going to be this one or the next one where this place is, but the more I talk it out, the more it really sounds like it would fit here. So we're still going to generate the settlement just as we've done all the other stuff, kind of ignoring the idea that there's a shipyard. Like, we won't come up with details that make that not make sense, but we're going to come out with what are all the things in addition to it being the place that Emil needs to go to get his power core. So let's get started on that. All right, so let's get started. First off, let's just roll a name for this place so that I can officially have it for my notes. And we have Vega. So we've got Sigil and Vega on this planet of Taiga. I don't hate it. I don't really feel anything one way or the other about it. I don't know really why either of them are called what they are. It probably comes down to their individual histories. But this settlement of Vega has a population of dozens. I mean, Sigil was hundreds, and they're at war. I just want to make sure that it makes sense that, like, they're at kind of a little bit of a stalemate when we get there at being at war. I guess it could be a type of situation where Sigil is in the low hundreds, like a little over 100, and this is in kind of the high dozens. Or maybe Vega is just, like, better equipped. Like, they've got a better structure that is a little bit more permanent. Like, they don't have to move around. They're not going to be nomadic like the people of Sigil. And so as a result, they're able to develop a little bit more and be more defensible and work on their own armaments and things like that. They might just be able to get more done as individuals. It's just weird for me to think of something protracted like a full-on war when the populations are so low. Like a battle, sure, villages battling each other, but a true war, these numbers just seem so low. And it might be just like little snipes back and forth. Like the war might just be more that they are hostile with each other, and there's a lot of raiding going back and forth, but it's not like a war in the sense that we would full on imagine it with, like, battle lines and big moments where like there are like fielded armies. I think it would be a lot more guerrilla than that. So yeah, okay. Well, let's keep it. It seems a little bit weird, but I can kind of internalize it where, yeah, they're just better equipped. And so the dozens are able to hold up against the hundreds better because the hundreds are just so focused on bare survival. Okay. Well, let's roll their authority. They are a corrupt authority. See, again, it's very interesting for me to think about kind of my own associations with concepts. Like, it's not that these things can't work, but it's weird to me how much my brain wants to think of like a corrupt authority being for like a big city or something, but it's harder for me to square it away with the idea of like, if you have a population in the dozens where truly everybody knows each other and intimately, like that's a level where there's like, you're talking like a handful of families. It's harder for me to imagine getting away with being corrupt when you don't have the ability to kind of like hide in obscurity everything that you're doing. Like, I'm sure you can to a degree, but I don't know, for some reason, I just imagine that low of a population being better able to deal with somebody being corrupt on top. So I want to think about how that manifests. Like, maybe it's not about an authority of Vega that is corruptly running Vega and like all the rest of the population would hate it if they knew what they were doing. Maybe it ties a little bit more into just they would be seen as corrupt from the eyes of the Imperium. Because let's remember, we're here in the Terminus where Imperial law is a big deal. We've spent this whole game in the Outlands so far. That doesn't really come to play, but perhaps the idea of them being corrupt is more just that the authorities here are noteworthily bribable and manipulable to skirt the exact laws when it comes to trade and the taxes owed and everything. Like they're willing to do a lot under the table here on Vega. They're shifty. And that goes all the way to the top. Like certainly goes in like the shipyard itself, but all of them are generally speaking trying to skirt around the will of law. And that kind of makes a little bit of sense to me that we'd be seeing some of that behavior more on these planets, because if the Outlands are where we've been and we've now moved one sector over into the Terminus, presumably we're on kind of like the very edge of the Terminus where the lines are getting a little bit blurred. We're far away from the central hub of what the Imperium runs, so you can probably better get away with skirting the law a little bit. And maybe when you're not encountering like the heads of government and everything all the time, and you may not be getting as good of the benefits of being part of the Imperium when you're this far out. You know, these people are sitting on a relatively inhospitable ice planet. They're not seeing a lot of benefit from being members of the Imperium. So they're probably all the more primed to try and skirt around the rules. Particularly in Vega, though. Sigil is just trying to get out of an awful tax loophole in the wrong way where they're just being taxed on things that they shouldn't. Sigil is just being, I think, relatively reasonable. Even the Imperium would probably accept that if they knew, like, Sigil just probably doesn't have time to do things through official channels and submit things in. But whatever, we talked about that all last time. I don't need to get all the way back into Sigil's tax issues. So Vega, yeah, they are corrupt in the sense that they are specifically always looking to kind of get away with as much as possible when it comes to Imperial law, and will definitely be willing to overlook some shit when it comes to outsiders dealing with them. Like, they're a relatively safe haven in that regard. Or at the very least, if not, maybe safe is the wrong word. Maybe it's more a situation of like they're very mercenary about it, where they follow the money. Whoever's going to pay them the most, that's where their allegiance lies. And so you might not be safe going to Vega dealing with them if they've already been gotten to by somebody with a fatter purse. That kind of thing. Okay, yeah, I think that's easier for me to square away as like how you get away with being corrupt when there's that low of a population, is they're all in on it together. It's less that the authority corrupt, and it's more that the entire settlement is kind of corrupt. And maybe even it's worth noting that like they're a little bit backstabby. No, as when I said it, I don't like it. I meant actually like towards each other, not towards outsiders, but I don't know that I love that. I think that it's not that they're, crab bucketing their way to the top and always pulling each other down. I think they all recognize a good thing when they have it, and they're. It may be a little bit of a stretch of the word corrupt. It's probably not what you typically mean by that idea of a corrupt authority, but it still works. And the whole point of these is just to spark ideas for what these planets work like. There aren't really wrong answers if they make you brainstorm and be creative. It worked, no matter how you got there. Okay, so we've got population, we've got authority. Let's take a look at first look. Let's roll a couple of those. High-tech construction. Okay, that would make sense if we've got, in contrast to Sigil, they're ice-carved homes and like igloos and nomadic presence. Here we've got high-tech construction. It sounds like Vega maybe got here first and had more of the benefit of being able to really take things from this down ship and use them to make, like, it's still, they probably have something more like what we would imagine on Hoth, like the rebel base there. They've got a big bunker set into a mountainside that's mostly sheltered, big blast doors. Well, okay. The one thing that I want to be wary of is this is very similar to how we described things back on Cinder. We talked about that as being basically the lava Hoth. But I think it's kind of fair. I think we see a lot of... Maybe let's not do the full-on it's set inside of a mountain, because we've done that. That part we definitely did on Cinder. I want this to look a little bit more distinct, and not just because it's snow and ice instead of lava and fire. Let's have it not be inset into a mountain, but still, they've really put together from ship parts and, fuselage, that's the word I'm looking for. They've put that into quite a just like enclosed, almost like an arena, because it doesn't have to be that big. It's only dozens of people here. It's all enclosed with these big blast doors that it still has. Lots of broadcast equipment. I think that they have invested a lot into being truly plugged in to like pretty high-speed internet here. We've talked about how the sector internet can be a little bit challenging, but that's especially in the Outlands, and now we're in the Terminus. This place, it's probably like a hub of some of the repositories, and like they probably do something kind of like being a server farm out here, where they've got this really high-speed internet to upload and download things and keep the repositories up to date and keep their finger on the pulse of who needs what and potential deals, and getting those messages out to the rest of the Terminus so that people come and know, like, hey, we were just able to salvage this from the down ship. Yeah, let's say that's part of the high-tech construction. It's a strong investment in the local internet. And the way that it connects to the galaxy. Okay, so high-tech construction. Let's do another one. Sprawling or dispersed structures. Huh, okay, well that goes against the initial thing I was saying about it being kind of one almost arena-like thing that they're all inside. I guess you could have that with it just being sprawling, but not really, like... Dispersed would be very different from that, though. So let's see, how do I want to make that work? Sprawling or dispersed structures? It could be that maybe instead of kind of rebel base sort of vibes like I was painting before, it's a little bit more science-y in the sense of it, like putting a colony on Mars where you'd have just kind of a lot of individual modules that are connected with pathways on the surface. And so you just have these like maybe like dodecahedron sort of shapes that are out there that are all in these various different directions connected through maybe even underground tunnels rather than... Yeah, let's do underground tunnel network rather than kind of tubes that are above ground, because I said something kind of similar to the place on Eldoris that has all of the heavy rainstorms and stuff. So yeah, this will be an underground tunnel network that goes to all these different kind of modules that are out on this snowscape. And, we see antennas everywhere poking up from all of them. There's probably one in particular that is a much larger structure that's kind of like more of a hangar, where that's probably where we have the true like ripping apart salvage and like selling stuff. The shipyard is kind of connected all to that. And because it's way up top, no, we'll have that building, but as far as where the like internet antennas and stuff are, they're probably even higher up on like a local peak of a mountain. We see like all kinds of like satellite dishes and broadcast towers and stuff. Those are up there with this like thick cabling that runs. That's probably maybe that's I don't think they would want to tunnel their way all the way to that. It would just be too inconvenient. So it's like thick cabling that's above the ground just by necessity, but it's typically buried in a layer of snow and some other kind of shielding. Like it's kept relatively protected, but at least the benefit is you can service it. Well, actually, I don't know what would be easier to service. Probably easier if it were in a tunnel. It would just be too much of a pain in the ass. So yeah, we've got this cable running down from the mountains towards this kind of sprawling network of different dodecahedron structures, as well as a kind of hangar, and they're connected through all these tunnels. And I want to make it a little bit more high tech, though. I don't feel like I've fully captured the high tech. Maybe, and this would explain a lot of how they're able to get away with having only dozens of people there and dealing with the people of Sigil. Maybe we should have full-on energy barriers instead of, like, we could have one of those, like, energy domes that goes over a lot of this. Because they've been stealing stuff from a giant ship. They'd have the power to be able to do that sort of thing. So yeah, let's have that be there. This whole area, so maybe it's even climate controlled inside and we don't need the tunnel network. Yeah, well, I'm rewriting this a little bit. I like the visual of in the middle of the ice planet, we have this area that looks actually like lush and green. Like they have like lawns and stuff in there because they have this energy barrier around the habitat where it's all like climate control. Like people are walking around in like t-shirts and shorts. I mean, not literally, it'd be something more sci-fi, but the equivalent of that, where it's all just nice in there. You're sheltered from the storms. Now, maybe if they aren't careful, like an ice fissure will open up beneath them or something. But for now, it's been nice in this spot. And yeah, that's the really high-tech part, is the ability to go in and out through this energy barrier that they can open up like parts in it to, if they ever need to get truly outside, largely to do raids on Sigil and stuff like that. And well, I guess largely to go out to the ship and salvage more, because I think they are, I want to say the ship is too untenable to build anything near. Like neither of the settlements can be built especially close to it. So the people of Vega that have to go out and do their salvage jobs, they have to do quite a trek to get out there. And this is why, going back to what we talked about last time with kind of the routes that are held by individual people, and they like they might charge tolls to people to use them, stuff like that. So every once in a while, people do have to gear up, go outside the energy barrier, and truly brave the environment. But when you get back to this area, it's such a nice place to work in. And that probably works to their benefit as well for dealing with people from the outside coming in to buy stuff. Like, you can almost have a bit of tourism here. Like, do I want to do that? I don't know. Let's roll some initial contact to see, like, what are they like? Would they be open to tourists and stuff? Let's see. Their initial contact is wary, so maybe it's not a big tourism spot. I went too far with that one. But still, when people are in, they vet them enough. And it would make sense to be kind of wary when they're in the middle of a kind of conflict with the people of Sigil, and they don't want to take down their energy barrier unless it's worth it. Like, it's probably a big pain to let in the outside environment like that, especially for something like a full ship to come in. That's probably a process and a half to make that work without just fucking over everything. So they do a lot of, contacting you via broadcast when you're out in space and eventually giving you the clearance to go inside. They probably have people park their ships outside the energy barrier and then somebody meets you and leads you in. That would make more sense than trying to get a ship inside. Maybe they even have a secret tunnel, like a sally port kind of thing, where there are ways to get out of the energy dome if you need to. Because I'm just imagining, like, let's say someday somebody were sieging them, right? And this is their castle. If somebody sieges you, you do need a way to get out without bringing down the walls. So they probably keep that very secret inside the mountain that has the broadcast equipment. There is indeed a tunnel that goes towards like that bottom level. It doesn't go all the way. They don't like do a mine shaft kind of thing that goes all the way up to the top. Like they didn't carve that out to be able to get the cabling all the way up there. And they probably specifically don't run the cabling through their secret tunnel because they don't want somebody to be able to follow the cabling and then figure out where it is. But yeah, there's maybe a little sally port. I'm going to write that down, actually. So let's put in the energy dome over settlement. Secret tunnel leading from inside to inside a nearby mountain. So one could, in theory, get in that way. Now, with them being wary, that's definitely not how they greet people inside. There is still a way to lower at least kind of a part of the energy dome to allow like people in. It's small enough. It's relatively small, though. Maybe it's the type of thing where it's kind of an active process where people have to come by with, since they're very high tech, they have sort of these metal rods that you can put in as a pair, and you shove them through. They have some kind of like opposite energy that allows them to push through the barrier so that they're sticking on both sides, and then like a team of people then pulls them apart, and it kind of makes this little bit of a doorway in there, and then you put them back together and it closes it up and you pull them out. And I would imagine that sort of technology, that something that could make it through the energy barrier, would probably be pretty prized by the people of Sigil. But anyway, this is what happens when we get this kind of brainstorming stuff. So that's our initial contact. We've got the first look and everything. We need their projects and we need their settlement trouble. So projects in particular is going to be where I want to keep in mind that this is all in addition to the fact that they clearly have a big shipyard. So to the degree this paints a picture of what they do here on Vega, tack on that. Let's get a first project. Subsistence. Okay, it makes sense. It's still not exactly the friendliest planet to get by on, and yeah, they've got their climate control and everything, but food is still a process. So perhaps part of the big problem is that much as they would like to grow food inside the climate-controlled dome, and they probably do some amount of it, it would be too hard to make a dome big enough to really give them the acreage they need to just, like, use that benefit to grow crops. Like, they got a big power source, but it's devoted, like, they don't have one ready to do that. Though maybe that's the project. Yeah, like, that's what makes this active, is they haven't done it yet, but the plan is to try and beef this thing up to be a big enough dome to give them that kind of acreage so that they can actually start growing things, like just cold climate things that are buried deep in the ground. Like, they have some kind of like tubers and stuff and things that will grow out there deep down, but not a lot. It's not the most pleasant, and they probably, actually I forget, what kind of life do we have on this planet? What does Taiga have? Scarce. Okay, so that's right. So there is some plant life that they can make work and can eat, but it's not wonderful. There is some, maybe there are some animals that they can eat, but they're scarce. I imagine Vega gets by a lot on just what they have gotten for people. Like, when people come here to buy things from the salvage yard, among other places, the trade of food is probably a big deal to them. They probably aren't self-sufficient. So yeah, that's their first big project, is they could be, if they could expand the dome out enough to be able to just grow things inside the bubble, that would open up all kinds of things. So they're working on that. Now let's get another project. Oh, actually, let me make that note. Subsistence is growing the energy bubble to be able to grow crops inside. And the next one, I rolled subsistence again. No, let's roll it again. Defense. Okay, I mean, again, makes sense if they're in the middle of this conflict and they know, like, they're not able to just easily get up and move. That is not their style. But they have an energy barrier, so what is the defense project they'd be working on? Because that's a pretty damn good one for defense. Actually, maybe we should have it that the defense isn't about the people, like, defending themselves from the people of Sigil, because they're pretty safe from them. I want to say this conflict, even though they don't have the numbers, they're in a pretty good position for it. I guess when they're inside the bubble, they'd be less so when they're doing their raids, or they'd be less so when they're doing their salvage. So there's two directions I could take this. One is they need better defense against just, like, the chaotic nature of the planet sometimes opening up fissures and stuff. But I actually kind of like the idea that that's an area where they really just, like, Sigil has the upper edge on them by far. Sigil does not share that information about how they predict this sort of thing. Vega doesn't know how to do it, and maybe is even kind of like brazenly ignoring it to a degree, that is a potential danger. So never mind, we won't do that one, but the defense should have something to do with how do they defend themselves when people are going to scavenge from the ship. Because I think right now that's the additional danger is, of course, that would be an opportune time for Sigil to actually strike. It would hurt them a lot. That's their very livelihood. And Sigil has the numbers and they're nomadic. They're much more able to, they know the land better to be able to survive it and seize their opportunity and just be where they need to be. They can have people kind of spotting and seeing when the opportunity is coming. So Vega needs better defense against that. And it might just be a matter of... It might be that they're working on like a personal camouflage kind of device. Some way that they can be harder to spot. Because I think it's not about just having better weapons or whatever, because they're just so outnumbered. Like they already have weapons, but the numbers are such and like the ambush is such that it's only so helpful. The big problem is that they need to find a way to not be spotted in the first place, or at least not spotted for longer until they might have a chance to be more aware of where the people are. So I feel like the defense is one of two things. It's either better reconnaissance or better ability to cloak themselves. And I feel like because of the high-tech construction, and then we've painted a picture of them being pretty tech-savvy and like gadgety, I kind of like the idea of them working on a kind of cloaking device. Especially because that's the kind of thing that could be really handy. Like if Emil can get that technology from them, maybe it could be modified for his ship. He could have a cloaking ship. I think what they're working on is much more small scale, though. It's like a more personal device that at least for some periods of time, they want to be able to perfect the idea that somebody can move about stealthily. Probably not perfectly invisibly, but it would make them way harder to spot for these raiding parties. And so if they get that on all of the people as well as whatever vehicles they use... Actually, yeah, I guess they're probably driving more like just big trucks and stuff to do... Well, can they? If the ice is so problematic... Maybe there are certain roads that they are pretty confident in, and those are the really prized ones, and they can bring trucks along those roads. Yeah, there's like a main road back and forth that they can get to. It still probably has its hazards at times, but it's thick enough ice that they can reliably drive a truck. And so they just need that kind, or a truck-like thing, some kind of vehicle, enough that's able to carry big salvage things and the crew that's going to get it. And so the idea is they need a way to make that truck stealthy. Something they can put on the outside, a kind of system, potentially, like the James Bond car that could do it, where there were just cameras and little screens interspersed so that it was just always showing you what was on the other side. It was imitating the idea of light passing through. Or maybe a way to indeed bend light. I mean, we are in a sci-fi game, so they're working on a cloaking device for the truck. I'm just going to write that down. So cloaking device for salvage crew trucks. Cool. All right, so that's a couple of things that they don't have that they want. And let's roll some trouble. Betrayal from within. It sounds to me like somebody is making a deal with the people of Sigil. Probably somebody who's on a salvage crew who has had reason to go back and forth. Maybe at one point somebody got captured and eventually released. And so now they're working from the inside to try and sabotage the energy dome. There is a coordinated strike happening with the people of Sigil to eventually have a raiding party, like basically let them inside the walls. And if that can happen, then they have the numbers and could very much get Vega by surprise. And so perhaps this deal comes from a person who is set to, you make that sort of deal when you're set to come up on top and just be like, hey, I'll still be in charge of X. Like, I don't want it to all come back to the salvage operation, because it would be interesting to me if there's a little bit more going on here than that. But honestly, it's the strongest idea we have so far, and I don't mind, in that Star Wars kind of way, like, this is the ice planet, and this is the salvage planet. I mean, in this case, it's both, but places can be a little bit more one note than they'd probably be overall. It's not completely realistic. I'm sure the real Vega would have more going on to it, but perhaps all roads can lead back to this salvage operation. I mean, they would clearly also have farmers and stuff. They're working on that. Like, People do other things, but it is a major source of their economy, especially if they're trying to rely on it for food from the outside. So somebody who works in there perhaps wants to be on top and like truly be in charge of all of the salvaged goods from inside the hangar and everything that they've got. And Sigil has made an agreement that could be arranged. I think the main thing the people of Sigil want is just to be able to live inside this bubble. And then... No, I've got it. I don't think they get to inherit all of the hangar or anything like that, because I think Sigil wants... If they had what they wanted and they were living inside this bubble, they would also be doing more salvage stuff. Like, they do it on their own as well to the best of their ability. They don't really sell it to other people. They just use the salvage for their own goods. But they wouldn't give all that away. However, I think Vega has kind of a tight control over, like, everything that they salvage is meant for their own, like, their trade system. It's not meant for people to use for their own projects. And I think this is a person who wants access to some of these parts to build their own just small ship, just like a single person kind of snub-nosed fighter sort of thing. They're probably not with that much in the way of weaponry. Just something, some kind of shuttle that can get them off this planet. They want to leave and go somewhere else, and they don't seem to have a way to do that right now. And they are willing to betray their people in order to do that. And Sigil is willing to make that deal. Okay, so that'll be the one settlement trouble. I'll make a note of that. Deal with Sigil to bring down energy dome in exchange for using parts to get off world. Okay. Feel like we've got a pretty good sense of this place then. And since we've already done the planet that we're on, we're done with that, so we have just one more settlement to do. Though before we move on from this place, I just got to do this one time. Hold on. Vega! I was actually just talking the other night about how the little factoid about how that little snippet of Sega at the beginning of Sonic took up apparently like an eighth of the size of the cartridge just for that sound file. Fun times back when things were so limited. But with that on the mind, I had to do it once. All right, let's get our final settlement here. So what do we got? The type of settlement is planetside again. Okay, then we'll wind up making one more planet. So like last time, let's do the planet first. So abandoning that little thing for the moment while we make a new planet. All right, our type of planet is... No, I rolled Ice World again. Veto. We're not having a second one. Rocky World. Sure. We haven't had one of those yet in-game. Its name is... Umbra. Bruh. You got a rocky planet. Let's have this one actually be not technically a planet. Let's make it... This is inspired by when I added it to the map. It was a little bit smaller. Let's make this the moon of... Well, no, I was going to say let's make it the moon of one of these planets, but considering these places may or may not have, like, connected lines between them that allow you to, like, known paths, it wouldn't make a lot of sense if you needed to full-on, like, undertake an expedition to get between a planet and its own moon. So, moon's not... I mean, it could still be a moon of a planet, but it's not a moon of one of the... It's not a moon of Taiga or Eldoris. So, Umbra... Well, let's stick with it because I said it. It's a moon of some place. Real rocky. And let's see. Do we have any atmosphere? We have... None/thin. Okay, so this is very much like our moon. Observe from space. We have... towering plateaus. And a massive impact crater. So yeah, right, so far I'm definitely picturing, like, this is not too dissimilar from just our moon. I think there is one massive impact crater, but also just various little craters pockmarking the surface and plateau. Like, they're just... The plateaus are probably the easiest spot for them to have wherever this settlement is going to wind up being. Which I'd have to imagine in a place like this, we're talking, you know, refueling station or mining operation or something. But the options are a little bit limited when you have a world like this. Let's see, is there any life on it? There's no atmosphere, so it would probably have to be pretty tiny. None. All right, no life, Maybe some deep ice or something. Let's roll a couple of features. We have glassy impact craters. Interesting. So certainly the really big one definitely is. So the bottoms of these impact craters they're very smooth and glassy, perhaps revealing a kind of special material in the core, and maybe that's easier to get through to get at it. Like you mine through the glass part to help you prospect or something. Ooh. I rolled another planet-side feature, and this one is a planet-side precursor vault. So maybe inside, when you look through the glass on one of these, you can see that there is, like, deep down there is a sign that there is a vault that is the inside of this planet. Almost like the whole moon itself is just kind of a container for the vault. So perhaps the operations here are actually all about, what if this is the trap one? We talked a little bit about how Tycoon had gotten a little bit famous within the Vault Hunters for alerting them that there was a vault that was too obvious and it was a trap. Maybe that's this one. And so, like, yeah, there's a clear vault on the inside. You can tell that this is a moon that was formed up around formed up as a kind of shell around the planet, and with these glass craters that would reveal it. Like, it was one of the easier ones to find. And sure, you'd have to mine your way down there or find a route to be able to get to it. And even from there, there's probably more to actually get inside the vault itself. But let's say this is the obvious one. So Tycoon has a history here on Umbra. Well, not being there, I suppose, but knowing that it was a trap. Now, there's still going to be a settlement here. It's not just like this old abandoned Imperium trap or anything, but yeah, this will be from that story. Okay, so neat. So yeah, we've got a very just like the moon kind of place that's got probably mining operations and stuff, and the hint of this vault down below. But now let's get an idea of the actual settlement on it. So we're on a rocky planet. The name of this place is Argosy. Argosy. All right. That sounds like the type of name that would have like a number after it. Like it would be like Argosy-7 or something. Or like some Greek letters or something. Like Argosy. Let's call it like, because Argosy is maybe like a name of somebody, but like Argosy-Sigma base. I don't know. That I'm manually typing that in. That just it fits right in my soul. This is Argosy-Sigma base. It probably had a pretty mundane purpose at one point, again, for like refueling or something like that. Maybe it's a little bit outdated too, where like this was more necessary in earlier ways to get around, but some of the new types of fuels and jump technology have kind of made this a little bit obsolete. And so I'm like imagining it like having the vibes of when you're driving cross country or something and you go past a like really, really old gas station with like these ancient looking pumps that you wonder like if they still work or something. So like it still serves a purpose for certain types of people, especially because we're kind of right on the border of the Outlands. Yeah, there should probably be a path from here into the Outlands. Like this is probably where the one we were following goes directly to. So like they're kind of your last stop. It's kind of like it's that last gas station before a huge stretch where there's not going to be a chance to refuel again. So like you better stop here. You never know what you're going to get in the Outlands. So this is your last place at this point to kind of stock up on supplies and make sure that your engines are capable before and do it legit before you go a little bit too far. But yeah, I like the image of them not really keeping up with jump technology. And so this used to be more of a necessity with previous technologies of ships. Now, like, basically no one goes here. It's very seldom that you would need to do something like this. But I don't know, let's have that be informed a little bit by what is the population of this place? Hundreds. Okay, so hundreds. So I could buy that there's still just... Let's see, I'm not yet sure whether that's going to be a low hundreds or a high hundreds. Let's roll a little bit more about this place to get a better idea. Like, other than the little kind of trope level stuff that I talked about. What is going on here? So if we get a first look, we'll do a couple of those, and we have... Now I got built from random scrap again. Once again, we've done that. Now I'm gonna roll that again. I just like the individual. Like, yeah, it's not that we have to have it be different every time, but I don't know. There are certain things that I want to feel a little bit more unique, and built from random scrap is one of those. Especially because I don't want this to once again I don't want it to be another scrapyard. As I said, I get more vibes of like old gas station. But it's got rustic architecture, which works. Old, outdated stuff. Nobody goes out here enough to really update this place. So it's not only rustic architecture, but in my mind at least, outdated technology. I'm actually going to make a note of that. Outdated technology. And it wants me to roll a descriptor and focus, so let's do that. All right, so for descriptor and focus, we've got mysterious life form. Ooh, now that's intriguing. Especially because we know there's no life on the planet in general, so what that makes me think of is something connected to the vault inside. Because while it may have been a trap, it is still actually a vault in there. So like... The people of Umbra, they're not vault hunters, but they know there's a vault beneath them. Yeah, I feel like the mysterious life form has got to be connected to that vault somehow. So like the moon, I kept saying planet, the moon doesn't have life, except on the very inside, there's some kind of old life form. So, all right, we're going to need to roll some life form oracles to get an idea of what sort of thing this is. So one moment. So we have mysterious life form. I'm not going to roll everything about it because I want it to be mysterious. We shouldn't know everything. But my immediate thought on that, it made me think of like, because Stranger Things next season is coming out, it made me think of like the Mind Flayer. Just kind of this looming presence in the background that's like weird and arcane and unknowable and somehow manipulating all of the things. You know what? I'm not actually going to roll details on it because, yeah, I wanted to say mysterious, but suffice it to say, you see movement inside. Like, when you look down through the glassy bottoms of some of these craters, it's very, like, refracted and it's through layers. Like, it's not easy to get a good view of what's down there, but there's movement. Sometimes, on some nights, it's been reported by a lot of people, they see something moving around down there. And maybe there's different ideas about what to do about that, but they don't want to risk... Like, there's probably a lot of people that don't want to risk investigating it further because it could be seen as them trying to be vault hunters, and that's illegal. Because right now it's all sealed away under the glass. And what's interesting is, like, these reports have come, like, decades and, like, generations apart. So you would imagine anything that's down there couldn't survive that long. They don't, like, what are they surviving off of? What do they have access to? It's all sealed away. There shouldn't be anything. All the core samples they've ever taken, like, it's just rock. And, well, the vault. But there's something down there that's been alive for generations. And they don't know what it is. But they do know that it is. Pretty public knowledge. Okay, let's find out about their authority. None/lawless. With the exception of the fact that they are certainly subject to imperial law here. But the way I interpret that is, outside of that idea that, like, everybody is still subject to the law, it's every man for himself out here. They're not necessarily hostile to each other, but there is no system for taking care of disputes or anything. There's no higher authority on Umbra. Everybody takes care of their own things. Sometimes that gets a little bit bloody. Like, you can absolutely get away with just killing somebody here. Again, the Imperium would say you can't, but you're probably not going to have too hard of a time getting away with it here. We're still, we're on these border colonies. They're right there up against where you go into the Outlands, so it carries over a little bit. And because this place is just so forgotten and outdated, like, you just have a number of people just trying to get by as best they can, and it's the Wild West here. Again, it's not that everybody here is an outlaw, or even necessarily a murderer or a bad person. Like, nothing like that is inherently true, but nothing will stop you from, like, solving your own problem however you see fit, as long as the Imperium's not actually around, and they regularly aren't. So, okay, we got no authority here. Let's see their initial contact. How are they to outsiders? Uncooperative. Now, that's interesting to me, because Because it's hard for me to imagine this being a wonderful place to live on its own. Like, just living on the moon. Got a lot of environments here that are, like, all three of these places are just, like, hard to live on. We got a water world with no life on it that's being done as a kind of experiment to see if people can still live there with very little atmosphere and no life. We got this ice world that's always trying to kill you, and we've got this rocky planet with this rocky moon with no life. You know, I suppose they could go back. They might fly off of this planet onto, or off of this moon to its planet. Maybe they get their food and supplies and stuff from there. And they're uncooperative. Maybe the uncooperative nature is just because there's no centralized authority to deal with here. Like, anybody you'd be talking to, they're just trying to get by on their own. Dealing with you is interrupting their day and their routine to be able to go down and get what they need. Like, they got shit to do. There's nobody whose job it is to just, like, deal with outsiders. So it's that. They're uncooperative because they don't, like, make it worth their while. You're interrupting things. Maybe they've got a bit of an attitude, like a little bit of a Luddite sort of situation where, because it has so affected them, like, the people here are kind of prone towards the idea that technology has gone too far, jump drives are wrong. Fast engines and, like, abilities to go at extreme speeds to get between planets throughout the galaxy, like, that was certainly a thing before, but they're not into all these new technologies that make it easier. And the fact that people moved on has wrecked them, and they like living their own kind of way here, where they just go back and forth between a nearby planet using the old technologies that they still like and are still perfectly serviceable in their minds. They keep it up. See, it's almost like a space, like, Amish or Mennonite kind of thing, at least in a stereotypical way. I'm no expert of what living that life is actually like, but that kind of idea of they are specifically regressive in their approach to technology because it's the way they like to live. And so they're relatively uncooperative with the outsiders who don't live that way and are just an interruption. I don't think, you know, they're not full on hostile or anything. And if you make it worth their time, they will deal with you, but they're just not prone to being cooperative because there's nothing in it for them. You live just such a very different life. And so, yeah, it's just a community of people that have all kind of come to that same conclusion. There's probably a lot of people that used to live on Umbra, or specifically on Argosy-Sigma base. I see it as being a much larger place that clearly used to house more people. A lot of them left. When the business dried up here, most everybody just kind of got out of here. So there's all these remnants around of when it used to be more of a service station. And I don't think they really do that much anymore. It's all just a bunch of individual people living their space Amish life, going back and forth between this and the actual planet. Maybe the planet itself is called Argosy. Yeah, I kind of like that idea. Okay, let's find out about some settlement projects then. Now, because they don't have a specific authority, they're just very individualistic. These are probably just going to be, like, depending on what we roll, it may not mean that everybody in this place is working on it, or even that a lot of people are. I think this is going to be indicative of, here are some prominent things that there are some individual families that are working towards. So the first one we have is secrecy. Okay, I interpret that as there is somebody who does want to find out more about... You know what? I interpret that as indeed one of the more collective things, that, you know, they don't have an authority there, but people get together and do talk about how it would be nice, because they don't really love outsiders that much. Which just occurs to me, this is yet another place that is kind of anti-outsider. Okay, so the way I'm going to interpret this is, I think there is a particular family or person or something that is trying to maintain their own secrecy because they do have a plan to try and find out a little bit more about that mysterious life form down below. They want to find a way to get towards one of the farther craters, drill down, and maybe find out a little bit more about what's going on down there. Most people have advised against it. They know they don't have the support of the rest of Argosy-Sigma, and so they're trying to just do it secretly on their own. So somebody's working on that. Let's make a note of it. So, a family working towards discovering more about the creature beneath the glass. And then our additional project, salvage. No, too much salvage. Let's roll it again. Black market. I see this as, we got hundreds of people here. There's enough to at least kind of get lost in a little bit more. Let's put this in the like mid to upper hundreds. So there are a lot of individual families here. Even though a lot of people left, there's still a lot remaining. And maybe these people have big families, so like it's just a few like very, very large families with lots of children. I think there is a black market for newer technologies among the people. Like the people here that don't want to admit it, but there are certain new things that they actually like, and there's a black market for it where you can, let's see, let's find out a specific thing. I want to roll in an oracle. Like, it's not just a black market in general, but a black market for a particular kind of good that on paper everybody agrees, oh, we don't partake in that. But there are people here that totally do. So let's find out what kind of thing might that be. I'm going to roll a descriptor and focus. Deadly symbol. I don't want that to be too literal. I like the deadly part of it. Like something that could be the symbol of death. Maybe it makes me kind of think of like a god of death, maybe, that has their own, like the symbol of that religion. I don't know if I want it to be that literal. Maybe it's the type of thing that protects you when you go to the main planet to get food and supplies and stuff. There's probably a lot more life there and just dangerous animals and stuff. And there is a way to protect yourself against them, to kind of ward them off, shield yourself, things like that nobody likes to admit to using, because it relies on some of the newer technologies that are out there, things that they have long since proclaimed are not the proper way to go about living. But it turns out it's really dangerous, and a lot of people die when you go there without it. Like maybe there's some particular kind of animal that, God, it almost makes you think like that's a planet full of fucking vampires. And you basically need the equivalent of a cross to go down there, but everybody's like, no, we don't do that. God, do I want to do that? Do I want to open it up to kind of ghoulish creatures that are warded off by a symbol in that kind of way? We do have, this place is called Umbra, which is very dark and sinister sounding. I mean, it means shadow. No, you know what? I don't really... I don't want to do a Planet of Vampires. It sounds like a cool idea. Maybe we can do something like that later, but I don't really want to do that here. Let's do something else. So yeah, there's like some kind of symbol, or not a literal symbol, but there is some kind of device you could take with you that will protect you against the local fauna that's down there. Helps ward them off. I don't know that we need to be specific about what it is just yet, but you're not supposed to use it, and there's totally a black market for providing them, because absolutely people do use it, because it's the easiest thing to get away with, right? Like, you're down on the planet, nobody can see what you're up to. You can claim whatever you want about what you did or didn't use. So there's a black market for a device that wards off local fauna on the main planet. It's taboo. Taboo slash... Well, I guess nothing can really be forbidden because there's no authority. So yeah, just it's taboo to use. And so yeah, that's just an ongoing project. It's not like they're developing that black market. It's that the project is perhaps making these devices, and because maybe they're limited kind of use, and so it's an ongoing thing you have to keep resupplying. Some kind of pheromone or something maybe. Yeah, that kind of works with the idea of a symbol. Let me write that in. Some kind of pheromone. Well, that doesn't sound like sophisticated technology to me. If the idea is that they're kind of Luddite in that way, it should be something a little bit more new technology to be able to make. Or maybe just the process of making it is a newer technology, but... So there is some family that, under the table, is totally continuing to make and supply these things. And they probably also have... And there's not only black market, but it's kind of a source of blackmail. Like, they know who's buying it. They could totally ruin somebody and get them shunned by various people if they ever want to. If you cross their bad side, like, they have this over you. Okay, and let's roll a settlement trouble. We have caught in the crossfire. I mean, the biggest crossfire that I can think of would be that time that the Vault Hunters and the Imperium, like, this was the staging grounds for what was supposed to be a trap. It's not an ongoing thing, though, so it's not that they're caught in the crossfire now, but maybe... Yeah, maybe these maybe these impact craters are not from meteors, but just all the like blasting fire and stuff. So there's just parts of this that are... Okay, so I think Caught in the Crossfire is there is regularly trouble here where, we're right on the border of the Outlands. Like, we are right there. We talk about this is going to be the path that we have. We're going to come up right to Umbra. When people are fugitives, when they are fleeing the Imperium, regularly they wind up coming through here. And they're often doing it while under fire. Like, the Imperium's pretty militaristic when they're pursuing people. And so Umbra is constantly just like, maybe not constantly, but regularly, they're caught in the crossfire between the Imperium and just outlaws. Not all of them are Vault Hunters, though sometimes they are, but just various people that are scofflaws and outlaws. When the Imperium chases them, Umbra typically suffers as they're firing back and forth. They're caught in the crossfire. There's collateral damage. It kind of wrecks their shit, and they're not so happy with it. But I imagine one of the ways that they're kind of Luddites, like, I don't think they're connected to the sector internet at all. I don't think they're in for that, so they don't really have a great way to communicate their grievances. They're just kind of here living their own local life. I'm going to make a note of that, actually. Settlement has no access to the sector internet on purpose. Regularly caught in the crossfire between Imperium and fleeing fugitives on the way out into the Outlands. Okay, cool. Like, is what I like about this game is, like, no, I'm not utterly brimming with story ideas coming from Umbra, but I've got a bit of a picture of, like, what type of place this is and what's interesting about them in ways that I would not have specifically thought of if I were just trying to come up with it whole cloth. This kind of space Amish thing that we found along the way, that's really interesting to me. So, we only have a few things left to do for the sector itself. We've got all these different planets and everything. We have our locations. Then we could generate stars. I don't think I personally care. Like, I don't know. There are stars around, maybe multiple of them, maybe just the one. We can determine that later if it ever comes up, but I don't care enough to figure out what type of star, and it is an optional step. So let's do this sector map by actually drawing, like, I've already placed them on my own thing, but we do need to create the passages between them. So we have 3 planets with 4 sectors. No, sorry. We have 3 planets, or one of them is a moon, but 3 planet-like objects with 4 settlements on them, and we need to place 3 passages on this map. Now, one of them is going to connect off the sector, at least one of them. So Umbra is going to have a connection to the Forgotten Channel. Was that the one we were just in, or was it Hidden Breach? Which one? Taking a look at that. Forgotten Channel. Okay, so yeah, we are coming from the Forgotten Channel, from the area around Anubis to this new sector, which doesn't have a name yet. So this is the flip side of that. This connects along that channel. So this takes you to there. That's one of our connections. Takes you to Umbra. Let's see. Eldor. I feel like I do want another one leaving. I regularly like, especially since we're in the terminus, maybe just each one of these places has goes to a different sector. Let's just do it that way. We'll keep it simple. So Eldoris will have its own way out of here. So that goes to some sector. And Taiga will have its own way out of here to another sector. So a lot of ways into here. And I'm just going to make my own little note on these that... actually, no. I was going to say I was going to make a note about, like, whether they go to more Terminus or Outlands, but I think we'll figure that out when it's relevant. See what feels the most right about where we're trying, like, where they should be. At the very least, we know the one from Umbra goes to Outlands, so I'll label that. So this will be... I'll just mention that it goes to the Forgotten Channel. So to Forgotten Channel. And I'll put in parentheses Outlands. Okay, and we don't know where the other ones go. All right, so those are our passages. Yeah, they all go to other sectors. Easy enough. Next, we would, in theory, zoom in on a settlement to get our first look in settlement troubles and stuff, but we've already done all these, and partly because we're not doing this as an actual starting sector. So we've already done this step. We found out all the things about all the places. We could create a local connection, which I did that last time. Let's see. Where would we have that connection? Umbra, Taiga, or Eldoris? Emil could maybe know somebody on Umbra or on Argosy-Sigma base. No, he's very techie. That seems... I don't know how much their lives would really cross over. I was like, maybe when he was on the ship and they passed through here before on the research vessel, on the Reacher, but no, I don't love that much. I do kind of like the idea of him knowing somebody who's in Sanctity, the locked off area. I don't want him to know somebody when he goes to Vega. Like that feels too simple for what I'm hoping for. Now, I mean, I like the idea of this person that we come up with coming into play, and so being on Vega would help that happen, but I don't want him to have too much in the way of help when he's on Vega itself. Well, I don't know, because, let's see, the plan is really... The plan is basically to go and get this power core and then go back and deliver. Like, that's what he's got to do. So we may not have an opportunity to explore much of this place. If I put a person on Eldoris, it seems very unlikely we're going to get there in the immediate term, so it would be kind of planning for the future if it ever comes up. So I guess that's the question. Do we want somebody on Sanctity inside there? You know, yeah, I still like that. I have no idea who they're going to be, though, so let's get some character oracles here. What kind of person? What kind of person do I want this to be? Let's do a character role. Cultist? Wow. Okay. And that more makes me think of them being a member of the, like, what was the resistance group? The one trying to take over. What was their name? The Exalted Court. I feel like a cultist would fit better with the idea of being one of the Exalted Court. Now, I don't want the Exalted Court to just be like a bunch of cultists. In fact, there are guilds, not a cult, which would have been a different thing when we rolled it up. But if we take cultist a little bit metaphorical of like more of a zealot for a cause, I could see that, yeah, Emil knows one of the Exalted Court members here who is, let's say, a historian, because we know that they were, like, a big part of what they're doing there is trying to look after information about the, like, culture that lived there before. So, yeah, we'll have a historian there that they've got broad knowledge. Like, they certainly know about what they're looking for, but I think they are pretty well versed in all kinds of different histories and stuff. And they're just a very, very knowledgeable character. They could be a source of... They could definitely help in that territory. So let's make a connection move. Roll in heart on this. And we have... Okay. Get a weak hit. So it's a connection that has a complication or cost. Envision what they reveal or demand. And let's see, what would... I mean, I feel like the complication would just be that, like, in order to help... If Emil ever gets there and deals with them, like, first, there's the complication of he'd have to be able to communicate or get onto the planet, which we know is rather locked down. So that's its own easy complication. I think the big one, though, would be that they would want Emil to help them, like, get something off the planet to other people of the Exalted Court. Like, they would want Emil to smuggle something out for them. And this would all be very difficult because the whole point is mostly when you go there, you don't leave. So they'd be hard to deal with. But let's give them a rank and a role. So we're going to call them a historian. Let's see if we can be a little bit more specific about that. I'm going to give them a name. So this person's name is... I'm just going to go by a call sign. Nope, we've already had that one. That's Deuce. Cutthroat. That's a new one. So Emil knows somebody down there named Cutthroat. Cutthroat the cultist. Wonderful. So this is Cutthroat. I think they are just troublesome. They're really not a big deal in the grand scheme of things. They are part of an organization that's a bigger deal, but yeah, I really have trouble seeing them as anything more than just troublesome. So they are historian of lost cultures. That's going to be what they're good at. So when they aid us in that, we'll get a +1 and take +1 momentum on a hit. But honestly, the odds of that coming up anytime soon are pretty small. It's just, we know that they are there. I'm going to put that in my notes, that they are They're currently on Eldoris. They're a member of the Exalted Court, and they're on Eldoris. Member of Exalted Court, secretly infiltrating the... I guess the Eldoris is the planet. I always forget, because I like the name Sanctity. The Sanctity Project on Eldoris. All right. So we've got a role and all of that. Oh, I guess we need to give them a few distinctive attributes. So let's roll. Let's do a few more character oracles. We've got first look. They're energetic and augmented. Okay, so maybe they're energetic partly because of their augments. Like this person is cybernetic. I'll just leave it that vague for now. Like honestly, that'll give us a jumping off point to figure out more about what that means if they ever come up. Let's see, their goal. Well, I'd roll their goal, but I know at least what the Exalted Court wants them to do. It's all about sabotage. Yeah, I'm not going to roll their goal just because we have enough of it from the Exalted Court that sure I could tack something else more personal on top of that, but I think I've got a good enough sense. I'll just note the whole thing about how they would want Emil to smuggle some kind of good or information off planet in order to be especially helpful. Maybe this is somebody who was also, because this is a pretty learned person, maybe this was also somebody who used to work on the Reacher and like their term was up and they eventually left. Because old cultures and stuff, like somebody who's learned in history may well be helpful for at least a little bit of understanding the contexts in which different animals lived. It would be kind of tangentially related, but they may have still had a role on that ship. But eventually we're finding... Or maybe even the Reacher's kind of project changed over time, and they became less relevant and eventually just left the ship and leaned more into the Exalted Court. And revealed character aspect. They are loving, but they are cruel. I love that pairing. That's amazing. Loving but cruel. So to me, that reads as like, if you're on their good side, there's nothing they won't do for you. But if you cross them, there's nothing they won't do to you. I truly can't express enough how much I love the way those two pair. So stay on Cutthroat. I mean, it's no fucking wonder their name is Cutthroat. When I was saying how much I love that, I forgot that was even their name. That is so perfect. A cutthroat historian who will hold a grudge. Or maybe they don't hold a grudge, but certainly in the moment, they will do whatever it takes to bring you down if necessary. All right, so last thing that we have to do then, last two things, we need to introduce a sector trouble, which got to be careful this time. Last time, this wound up being such a major thing. More than I was ever expecting. So let's get it. What is our sector trouble this time? Blockade prevents trade with other sectors. Okay, that would make sense. I mean, that could be immediately relevant if there's a blockade trying to stop people from getting to the... Yeah, let's do that. Trying to stop people from getting to the Outlands along the path that goes to the Forgotten Channel. Why don't we immediately have a blockade there that it's going to be its own trouble immediately when Emil arrives, because this is the path that outlaws take to get in and out. It's not that it's illegal to go into the Outlands, but there is certainly a blockade there. They don't want goods being traded back and forth, and of course that is literally what Emil is trying to do. So let's introduce that there's an Imperium blockade right there along that path. Love it. And the final thing we have to do, we just need a name for this sector. So let's get that. Okay, so this sector is going to be called Invidia Gate. And I feel like maybe it gets the name Gate just based off of how it's kind of like the gateway to the Outlands. And so it's really more of like, it's the sector is kind of Invidia itself, but it got that suffix of gate largely because of how this is such the like classic connection to get to the Outlands. It's not the only one, to be clear, but I think it's a very popular one. All right, so we have Invidia Gate. Okay, so I put a little token on my map just to kind of represent that there's a ship that'll be the blockade that's along that path. the path between the Forgotten Channel and Nvidia Gate. And with all of that figured out, I believe we're done with our sector. So next time we'll be able to get back into the actual play. We will follow the continuing tale of what happens when Emil and Tycoon, when the Beowulf and the Stardust continue making their way into the sector and find that there is a blockade in the way. But as for what they do when that happens, when they are literally trying to trade goods through this blockade, well, that's a question for next time. One thing I will say before we go, this is just a really quick thing, but Raul, I truly appreciated recently the knife emoji that you put on the recent episode the reason I mentioned it is because I totally forgot for a moment. I was like, why a knife emoji? For those of you who don't know, Raul is constantly, every episode, I know I've talked about it, gives a specific little emoji response that is relevant to that episode. And I was wondering what the knife was for, and I finally remembered, like, right, duh, because you put it on the episode where I got interrupted by cutting my hand on a knife at the end. Which incidentally, or not my hand, my elbow. Incidentally, yeah, that's continuing to heal up fine. It's gonna be fine. There's just kind of a scab there now. I totally forgot about it. Anyway, if the rest of y'all are curious about these emojis or want to join in on that fun, it all takes place in the thread that I've got in the creator promos area of the official Starforge Discord. Raul's always putting the emoji responses there. Feel free to put your own if you have your own ideas about how to represent these episodes. And of course, any feedback you have and any encouragement or interactions like that help let me know, like, yeah, people are listening and they're enjoying this. They're always so much appreciated. You can do it on the Discord. You can send me an email at starforgepod@gmail.com. You can certainly leave comments on the episodes themselves, or since I haven't said it in a long time, honestly, I really could use some more reviews on these podcasts, or ratings, reviews, whatever you want to do. The more you do, the more it'll help me kind of get this to more ears, and that would make me feel so awesome to know, like, more and more people are listening to this. I appreciate all of y'all who are. I mean, we're on episode 31. You've been sticking around for a long time. But the more you can help me reach more people, it would mean so much to me. So please, at the very least, drop a rating on this. But with all that out of the way, play me out, music.